A poor little girl, starving, holds a piece of bread and whispers, "If I just eat a little bit, maybe there'll be some left for my grandma." But when the young billionaire hears this, he does something unbelievable. Nathan Reed's wristwatch showed exactly 8:37 a.m. when he exited the private elevator that led directly to the ground floor of the imposing Reed Tower. The steel and glass building named in his honor only 8 months prior reflected the grey sky of that fall Tuesday. "Mr. Reed, the car is waiting 2 blocks away. There was a traffic issue on the main avenue," Margaret, his assistant, informed him over the wireless earpiece that Nathan rarely removed. "How long until the meeting with the Japanese delegation?" he asked, not slowing the pace of his precise steps while adjusting his Italian silk tie. 17 minutes, sir. Mr. Tanaka is already in the building." "Darn," he muttered, quickening his steps even more. At 25, Nathan Reed was what business magazines called an unlikely prodigy. Orphaned by his father's death at age 12 and practically abandoned by his alcoholic mother, who preferred traveling the world with her lovers, he had turned his father's small tech company into an empire worth billions. He was known for his flawless efficiency, calculated coldness, and for absolutely never being late to any appointment. The sky released a few heavier drops. Nathan didn't carry an umbrella. He never needed to. There was always someone to provide one if necessary. There was always a car waiting. There was always an immediate solution for any inconvenience that could disrupt his meticulously planned routine. "Recalculate the route. There must be a faster way," he ordered, his dark green eyes scanning the street for the black car waiting for him. People on the sidewalk instinctively moved aside when he passed. It wasn't just the obviously expensive suit or his impeccable posture. There was something about Nathan Reed that exuded authority, an aura of someone who couldn't be interrupted, who had important places to be and valuable things to do. That was when something happened. Something small, almost imperceptible amidst the city's orderly chaos. A whisper, so soft it shouldn't have been able to break through the barrier of indifference Nathan had built around himself. "If I just eat a little bit, maybe there'll be some left for my grandma." The words came from somewhere to his right, near the entrance of a small bakery located on the path between his building and the point where his car waited. Nathan wasn't in the habit of looking around. His eyes were always fixed on the horizon, the next goal, the future measured in minutes, hours, projects, and acquisitions. But something in that voice, a mixture of childlike hope and despair, made his body come to a halt. It was involuntary, as if someone had pulled an emergency brake within him. "Mr. Reed, is everything okay?" Margaret's worried voice sounded in his earpiece. Nathan didn't answer. For the first time in, how long? Years, maybe. His focus had been completely diverted. He turned his head slowly to the right and looked. Really looked. A girl, small, far too thin for her age, which he estimated to be around 4. Messy brown hair tied in a poorly made braid that looked on the verge of unraveling. A dress that must have once been colorful, but now displayed an undefined hue, worn out by time and overuse. She was partially sheltered from the rain by the bakery's small awning, and her large, round, deep brown eyes were fixed on the display window, where rows of bread and pastries were neatly arranged. Her dirty little hands were pressed against the glass, and she was on tiptoe to get a better view of what was inside. She wasn't crying, begging, or extending her hand to passers-by. She simply stared at the bread with an intensity Nathan immediately recognized as hunger. Real hunger. Not that fleeting feeling between meetings quickly solved by a snack fetched by some assistant. It was the kind of hunger of someone who doesn't know when they will eat again. "Mr. Reed." The voice in his ear now seemed very distant. Nathan brought his hand to the device and switched it off with an automatic motion. The girl continued gazing at the display, oblivious to his presence, oblivious to the adult world rushing by, oblivious to the rain that was now falling harder. He felt something strange in his chest, an uncomfortable pressure he couldn't identify. It was as if for a moment the world slowed down, leaving only that child and her fragile whisper of hope. Something broke inside Nathan, something he didn't even know still existed, an invisible wall between him and the rest of humanity, meticulously built over the years to protect him, to keep him focused, to turn him into the success machine he was today. His feet moved before his brain registered the decision. He was now just 2 steps away from the girl, close enough to see the faint freckles scattered across her small upturned nose, the smudges of dirt on her thin cheeks, and the slight trembling of her pink lips. "Hello," Nathan said, and he didn't recognize his own voice. It was different, softer, devoid of its usual authority. The girl turned, startled. Her eyes widened even more at the sight of the tall, well-dressed man standing so close. She took a small step back, cautious, but did not run away. "Are you hungry?" he asked, immediately feeling foolish. Of course she was hungry. Why else would a small child be alone staring at bread through a window, talking about saving some for her grandma? She didn't answer out loud, but her eyes spoke volumes, a mixture of distrust and hope that hit Nathan like a punch to the gut. He took a deep breath, feeling the rain soak his perfectly styled hair. The phone in his pocket vibrated insistently, probably Margaret trying to figure out why he'd turned off his earpiece. He began, unsure how to proceed. Nathan Reed, the man who could close million-dollar deals in a single phrase, who commanded rooms full of experienced executives, was at a loss for words in front of a hungry child. "Would you like something to eat? I can buy you a piece of bread." The girl remained silent, her gaze flicking between Nathan's face and the bakery display. "And something for your grandma too," he added quickly. "We can buy something for her as well." A small spark of interest appeared in the child's eyes. She bit her lower lip, clearly torn between a natural fear of strangers and a real need for food. "My grandma said not to talk to strangers," she finally whispered, her voice so low that Nathan had to lean in to hear. "Oh, your grandma's right," he agreed, feeling a strange relief to know the girl had someone who cared about her. "But maybe we can make an exception just this once. I'm really in the mood to buy some bread, and I won't be able to eat it all by myself." It was an obvious lie, and for a moment Nathan feared the child might sense the insincerity in his words. But apparently hunger spoke louder. "Okay," she said simply, still not smiling, but with a slight relaxation of her tense posture. "My name is Nathan," he offered, trying to sound as gentle as possible. "What's yours?" The girl hesitated for a moment before answering. "Lily." "Lily," he repeated, testing the name. It seemed fitting, delicate like a flower, yet with the resilience of something that grows even in harsh conditions. "It's nice to meet you, Lily. Shall we go inside? It's getting really wet out here." The rain was heavier now, falling in large drops that bounced off the pavement. Nathan opened the bakery door and motioned politely for her to enter first. The aroma of fresh bread and freshly brewed coffee enveloped them immediately. The bakery was small and cozy, with only a few simple tables and chairs. A middle-aged woman stood behind the counter, arranging bread in a basket. She looked up when the bell on the door announced the entrance of new customers. "Good morning," she greeted cheerfully, but her expression changed when she noticed the contrast between the obviously wealthy man and the clearly impoverished child. Her gaze shifted between them, undisguised curiosity in her eyes. "Good morning," Nathan replied, guiding Lily to the counter. "We'd like to buy some bread." Lily stared at the selection of baked goods with wide-eyed wonder. Her fingers clenched the counter's edge, and she strained to see better, appearing almost unable to believe the amount of food in front of her. "What would you like, Lily?" Nathan asked gently. She looked surprised to be consulted, as though she wasn't used to having a choice. Can I pick anyone I want?" she whispered, glancing uncertainly at Nathan. "Anyone," he confirmed, feeling that strange pressure in his chest again. "And as many as you want." The attendant watched their interaction with a clearly intrigued expression. Nathan realized the scene must look at minimum unusual. A man in an expensive suit, soaked by the rain, buying bread for a ragged child at 8-something in the morning. "I want that one." Lily pointed to a round loaf with seeds on top. "And that one looks pretty too." This time she indicated a small sweet roll with a sugar glaze. "Excellent choices," Nathan approved. Turning to the attendant, he said, "We'll take 2 of each of those. Also 4 of those whole wheat loaves, 2 sourdough loaves, a basket of cheese buns, and that chocolate cake. Do you have any soup or ready-made meals here?" The attendant nodded. "We have fresh vegetable soup just made, and also individual spinach and cheese quiches." "Perfect, 2 soups and 2 quiches, please, to go." While the woman gathered their order, Nathan felt a light tug on his sleeve. He looked down to find Lily's eyes fixed on him. "All this is for me and Grandma?" she asked, her voice a mix of hope and disbelief. "Yes," he confirmed, "all of it. You can have some now if you want. Are you very hungry?" Lily nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his, as though trying to unravel a particularly complex puzzle. "Can we sit over there?" she asked, pointing to a small table by the window. "Of course," Nathan agreed, surprising himself with how easily he was accommodating her. The meeting with the Japanese investors had completely receded to the back of his mind. Strangely, Nathan couldn't bring himself to care. 17 minutes earlier, the thought of being even a second late to that appointment was unthinkable. Now all he could see was the small face before him, expectant, wary, yet carrying a spark of hope that hadn't been there moments before. Nathan paid the bill, an insignificant amount by his standards, and guided Lily to the table she had indicated. The attendant served one of the soups in a bowl and brought one of the sweet rolls on a small plate, along with a glass of orange juice Nathan had added to the order at the last minute. "Go ahead and eat," he encouraged, taking a seat across from her at the small table. Lily looked at the food, then at Nathan, as though expecting some sort of trick. When she realized no conditions were being placed, she picked up the spoon and started eating the soup slowly, savoring each spoonful as if it were the most precious thing in the world. As she ate, Nathan watched her with a curiosity he couldn't explain. Something about this child held his attention in a way nothing had for years. "Do you live nearby, Lily?" he asked casually after a few minutes of silence. She finished chewing a piece of bread before replying. "Not too close. We walk a lot to get here. Do you usually come to the bakery alone?" Lily shook her head. "Grandma's sick today. She said there was no food at home, so I came out to look." Nathan felt his stomach tighten. A 4-year-old child walking alone through the city in search of food. What kind of desperation would drive a grandmother to allow that? "What about your mother?" he asked gently. "Your father?" Lily's face suddenly grew solemn. "Mommy left, Daddy too. It's just me and Grandma." The simplicity with which she stated her parents' absence hit Nathan like a physical blow. There was no self-pity in her voice, just the factual acceptance of someone who learned too early that life isn't always fair. "I'm sorry," he said, unsure of what else he could offer. Lily shrugged, a gesture strangely adult for such a small child. "It's okay, Grandma takes care of me. I take care of Grandma." She returned her attention to the sweet roll, breaking it into small pieces with her fingers before putting them into her mouth. Nathan noticed she ate slowly, savoring each bite, but also seeming to ration it, as if she didn't know when she'd get to eat something this good again. "And where do you go to school, Lily?" he tried again, hoping to establish some connection. "I don't go to school right now," she replied simply. "Grandma said she'll sign me up when she gets better." Each answer felt like a small stab. Nathan tried to keep his expression neutral, but something inside him was collapsing. It wasn't just pity. It was a deep recognition, a connection he couldn't explain. "What do you like to eat, Lily, besides bread?" he asked. A small smile appeared on her face for the first time, hesitant as if she wasn't sure she was allowed. "I like pasta and ice cream, but I almost never get it. What flavor of ice cream?" "Chocolate," she answered without hesitation, her eyes shining. "With rainbow sprinkles on top." Nathan smiled back, surprised at how natural it felt. He couldn't remember the last time he'd truly smiled, not the calculated grin for meetings and photos, but a genuine one, born from something simple and pure. When Lily finished eating, there was a subtle transformation in her appearance. Her cheeks were slightly pink, her eyes more alive. She drank the last of the juice and looked at Nathan with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. "Thank you," she said in a disarmingly sincere tone. "It was really good." "You're welcome, Lily," he replied, feeling oddly proud to have provided that small moment of joy. "Now let's get the rest of the food to take to your grandma, okay?" She nodded enthusiastically, sliding off the chair. Nathan gathered the bags with their items and looked at the small figure in front of him. It was still raining outside. "Do you know how to get back home? I can walk you there." Lily looked at him again with that evaluative expression that seemed far too old for her years. Finally, she nodded. "I know the way. It's far, but I know it." Something about letting her go alone bothered Nathan deeply. "I have a car waiting. We can give you a ride home if you want." She hesitated, mistrust flickering back into her eyes. "I promise it's safe," he reassured her, noticing her hesitation. "I just want to make sure you and the food get safely to your grandma." The small shoulders relaxed slightly. "Okay." As they left the bakery, Nathan realized the meeting with the Japanese investors had probably already started without him. For the first time in his career, he had failed to show up for a professional commitment. Strangely, he felt no regret, only a different urgency, an almost visceral need to ensure Lily got home safely. Walking together under the light drizzle, Nathan sensed something had changed. It was as though an invisible thread now connected his perfectly controlled life to the uncertain fate of this child. And for the first time in a very long while, he really looked not just at Lily, but at the world around him, at the people passing by, at the city's pulse, at the life beyond numbers and achievements. For the first time in a long time, Nathan Reed truly saw. Nathan's driver glanced in the rearview mirror with a carefully neutral expression as his boss climbed into the car accompanied by a small, ragged child. If he was surprised or curious, his years of professional training kept him from showing it. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," he greeted formally. "Where to?" Nathan helped Lily into the back seat, placing the bags of food beside her. The girl looked around in amazement at the luxurious interior of the vehicle, her eyes roaming over every detail of the soft leather seats and polished panels. "We'll follow Miss Lily's instructions," Nathan replied, causing the driver to raise an eyebrow almost imperceptibly. "She'll show us the way to her home." Lily, who had been inspecting the car, looked at the driver with a mix of shyness and curiosity. "It's far from here," she said, her small voice seeming even smaller in the silence of the luxury car. "You go straight, then turn where there's a big tree." Nathan smiled kindly. "And where is this big tree, Lily?" "Over there where the man sells balloons on Sundays," she explained with the peculiar logic of children, for whom emotional landmarks are just as valid as street names. Nathan exchanged a look with the driver via the mirror. "We'll follow your instructions step by step, okay? You tell me when we need to turn." Lily nodded solemnly, taking on her new responsibility with seriousness. She settled into the seat, craning her neck to see out the window as the car began to move. The rain was now just a light drizzle, and the windshield wipers moved at a slow, rhythmic interval. Nathan quickly checked his phone. 15 missed calls from Margaret, 3 from his VP, and 1 from Mr. Tanaka. He took a deep breath and turned the device off. Any corporate storm brewing would have to wait. "Do you always drive a big car?" Lily asked, breaking the silence. Her feet swung back and forth, not reaching the floor, and her small hands stroked the leather seats as if it were something precious. "Most of the time," Nathan replied, surprised at how easily conversation flowed between them, despite the enormous difference in their worlds. "Do you like riding in a car?" Lily nodded. "Grandma and I take the bus. One time we took a taxi, but only because Grandma was really sick." "What happened to your grandma? Why is she sick?" Lily's expression darkened slightly. "Grandma coughs a lot, and sometimes she's too tired to get out of bed." She paused, fiddling with the hem of her worn dress. "But she said it's just a cold and it'll go away soon." Nathan felt a tightness in his chest. The description suggested much more than a simple cold. "There, we have to turn there," Lily suddenly exclaimed, pointing to a corner where indeed there was a tree that was considerably larger than the others on the street. The driver complied, turning onto a broader avenue that was visibly less well-maintained than those downtown. As they continued to follow Lily's directions, the urban landscape gradually changed. The towering buildings gave way to simpler structures. Fancy storefronts were replaced by small shops with worn facades. Smooth asphalt turned to patched roads with occasional potholes. They were leaving the financial district behind and entering one of the city's more modest areas. Nathan recognized this route only from the numbers and statistics in urban development reports that sometimes passed across his desk. He had never truly observed the reality behind those figures. "Grandma sells flowers over there," Lily remarked, pointing to a small square where a few people sold handicrafts and flowers at improvised stalls. "On days she feels better, we come here early in the morning. I help her make bouquets." "Do you like flowers?" Nathan asked, following the natural flow of conversation. "I like the yellow ones," she answered promptly. "Grandma says they're like tiny suns you can hold in your hand." Nathan felt something thaw inside him. The poetic image, even from the lips of a 4-year-old repeating adult words, touched him in an unexpected way. "Now go straight," Lily directed, pointing ahead, "until you see the painted buildings." The car continued for a few more blocks until they reached an older apartment complex, once painted in vibrant colors that were now faded and peeling in many places. Despite their modesty and obvious neglect, the buildings seemed to hold on to a sense of dignity, as though they resisted abandonment and decay. "It's right there," Lily exclaimed, her voice filled with recognition and relief. She pointed to the third building in the block, identical to the others except for a small makeshift garden in broken pots near the entrance. The driver parked, and Nathan helped Lily out of the car, carrying the bags of food himself. He hesitated for a moment. He was about to step into a world completely different from his own, led by a child he barely knew. For an instant, he felt the impulse to simply hand over the bags, leave some money, and return to his controlled and predictable universe. But Lily's slight smile, the way she trustingly took his hand to guide him to the building entrance, completely eradicated that impulse. "There's no elevator," she said matter-of-factly as they entered the dimly lit building. "We have to go upstairs." Nathan nodded, following her up the worn steps. The air smelled of dampness and cheap cleaning products, occasionally mingling with cooking aromas emanating from some apartment. The corridor walls were marked by water stains, but they were clean, and someone had hung small clusters of artificial flowers in spots to brighten the environment. "We live on the 3rd floor," Lily informed him as they climbed. "Grandma says it's good because it's not too high to climb, but we don't get the noise from the street." On the 3rd floor, Lily led him to a door at the end of the corridor. The door, like everything else in the building, showed signs of wear, but it had been carefully painted a light blue. A small potted plant in decent condition sat beside it. "Here we are," she announced proudly, then knocked on the door with her small hands. Grandma, I brought food and a nice man." Nathan felt a sudden wave of nervousness. What would Lily's grandmother think of a stranger bringing her granddaughter home? No matter how well-intentioned he might be, the situation could easily look suspicious. There was the sound of slow steps approaching the door, followed by the scrape of a lock being unlatched. The door opened slowly. "Lily, my dear, what?" The woman's voice stopped abruptly as her eyes drifted from her granddaughter to Nathan. Time seemed to freeze. Nathan felt as if the floor had vanished beneath his feet. A strange buzzing filled his ears, and the world around him momentarily dissolved, leaving only the figure before him in focus. Eleanor Mendez, the woman who had cooked in his family home for over 10 years, the woman who prepared his breakfast every morning before school, the woman who placed homemade cookies on his bed on the nights his parents went out for social events, the woman who knew his food preferences, his allergies, his little childhood secrets. But this was not the Eleanor he remembered. That Eleanor had a round, cheerful face, dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, and a perpetual smile that lit up every room. The woman before him was a thinner, paler version, with dark circles under tired eyes and hair prematurely streaked with grey. "Nathan!" Her voice was an incredulous whisper, as though seeing a ghost. "Eleanor!" was all he managed to say, his voice sounding strange and choked. Lily looked from one to the other, confused by the sudden tension. "You two know each other?" she asked, her childish voice breaking the partial trance enveloping the adults. Eleanor held the doorframe for support. "Yes, dear," she answered, without taking her eyes off Nathan. I worked in his family's house when he was little, just like you." "Why didn't you ever tell me you knew a rich guy?" Lily asked, genuinely curious. An awkward silence settled in. broken only by the faint sound of a TV in another apartment. Nathan felt the weight of the bags in his hands and lifted them slightly. "Lily was hungry," he said, the words sounding inadequate and insufficient. "I found her looking at a bakery and we brought some things for you." Eleanor blinked several times, as though trying to process the situation. Then her gaze returned to her granddaughter, alarm creeping in. "Lily, you went out alone? I told you to wait until I was better so we could go together to get food." The girl hung her head, but there was a stubborn determination in her posture. "You were sleeping and coughing a lot, and I was hungry. And look, Grandma, everything turned out okay. I brought bread and soup, and Mr. Nathan has a big car." Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, torn between relief and worry. When she opened them again, unshed tears shone. "Come in," she finally said, opening the door wider. "Don't stand out there in the hallway." The small apartment was the opposite of what Nathan expected. Having seen the condition of the building and the apparent hardship of Eleanor and Lily, he imagined a decaying, disorganized space. Instead, he stepped into a modest but impeccably clean and carefully organized environment. The living area, which also served as a dining room, was small but welcoming. The furniture was obviously second-hand, but had been restored with attention to detail. Handmade, colorful cushions brightened a worn-out sofa. Simple yet clean curtains framed the single window. On improvised shelves made from painted crates, books were neatly arranged alongside a few plants. Childish drawings, clearly Lily's, were displayed on the walls, framed in colored cardboard. It felt like a home. There was no other word for it. In all its simplicity and clear signs of financial struggle, this small apartment radiated more warmth and humanity than the mansion where Nathan had grown up, or the penthouse he currently inhabited. "Please have a seat," Eleanor said, indicating the small table in the corner of the room. Her voice still trembled slightly. "I'll make some coffee." "No need," Nathan responded automatically, placing the bags on the table. "I just wanted to bring Lily home and the food. I don't mean to intrude." Eleanor paused en route to the open-plan kitchen, separated from the living area by a small counter. She turned and looked at him directly for the first time since her initial shock. "You never intrude, Nathan," she said, and there was a gentleness in her voice that instantly transported him back to his childhood. "You never have." Lily, oblivious to the emotional complexity of the moment, was already opening the bags, pulling out bread and pastries with a look of pure delight. "Look, Grandma, there's a round loaf with little seeds, and chocolate cake and soup I already ate at the bakery. But I saved room for cake." A smile spread across Eleanor's tired face, making her briefly resemble the woman Nathan remembered from his childhood. "That's wonderful, my love. But first, let's put everything away properly, and you'll wash your little hands, all right?" Lily agreed, and ran off to what Nathan assumed was the bathroom. When she was gone, an awkward silence fell between the adults. At last, starting to organize the food Nathan had brought. That same determination, that same independence. "Eleanor," Nathan began, but he didn't know how to continue. What could he say? That he was sorry, that he had no idea she was going through hard times, that he was shocked to find her like this after all these years? She seemed to sense his internal turmoil and shook her head gently. "There's no need to say anything. It was a long time ago." "What happened?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Eleanor sighed, pausing in her tasks to gaze out the window, as though she might see the past somewhere beyond it. "Life happened, Nathan. Your father let me go after your mother left, said he didn't need a cook for an empty house." Nathan felt as though he'd been punched in the gut. "I didn't know. When I came home from college that summer, he said you'd resigned to take care of your family." A sad smile curved Eleanor's lips. Stephen was always good at telling convenient stories. She resumed organizing the food, her movements precise and efficient, just as Nathan remembered. "After that, I worked in a few restaurants, but nothing permanent. Then my daughter had Lily and things got complicated. When she left, I ended up raising the little one." "Your daughter?" Nathan prompted. "Carmen?" Eleanor supplied. "She was too young, got involved with the wrong man. By the time she realized what kind of person he was, it was too late. She managed to get away from him, but she left Lily with me for safety. Promised to come back once she'd sorted everything out. But it's been almost 2 years now. Lily burst back in from the bathroom, still with slightly wet hands, halting the heavy conversation. Grandma, look, Mr. Nathan bought cheese buns just like the ones you used to make at the big house. Eleanor smiled at her granddaughter, though the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. That's true, my love. In the big house I made lots of cheese buns for Nathan. Lily turned to Nathan, her big eyes brimming with curiosity. You lived in a big house with a pool like the ones in movies. Despite the tension, Nathan felt a genuine smile form on his face. Yes, it had a pool and a garden, but do you know what was the best part of the house? Lily shook her head, completely engrossed. The kitchen run by your grandma, he answered, looking at Eleanor. Especially on Sunday mornings. Why? Lily persisted, tugging at his now wrinkled shirt sleeve. Because on Sundays your grandma made special pancakes. They weren't ordinary pancakes, they were works of art. She shaped them into different things, animals, cars, stars, and she decorated them with fresh fruit and chocolate syrup. Lily's eyes went even wider. Is that true, Grandma? You made pancakes shaped like animals? Eleanor, who had stopped working to listen to Nathan, smiled again, this time with genuine warmth. Yes, it's true. Nathan's favorite was elephants, both said in unison, then laughed, breaking some of the tension in the room. I've never had elephant pancakes, Lily declared, sounding almost accusatory as she looked at her grandma. Well, we can fix that, Eleanor replied. And for the first time since Nathan had entered the apartment, she seemed truly at ease. How about making some pancakes right now? We have all the ingredients, thanks to Mr. Nathan. The hesitation before calling him Mr. did not go unnoticed by Nathan, but he understood. What was he to them anyway? A stranger. While Lily celebrated the idea of pancakes with small jumps of joy, Nathan watched Eleanor move about in the tiny kitchen with the same grace and efficiency he remembered from the large, well-equipped kitchen at the Reed mansion. He saw her gather flour, eggs, milk, butter, transforming simple ingredients into something magical through movements that resembled a familiar dance. And it was then, watching the woman who had been more present in his childhood than his own parents, that Nathan felt something break inside him, like a dam holding back memories and emotions he had repressed for years. He suddenly recalled how he would run to the kitchen every morning before school, not for food, but for Eleanor's comforting presence. He remembered she was the only one who noticed when he was sad or worried, the only one who celebrated his small achievements with genuine enthusiasm. Eleanor had not just been the Reed family's cook. She had been in every moment that mattered his true family. Mr. Nathan? Lily's voice. Before he could respond, his gaze met Eleanor's. There was a silent question there, a door cracked open to a shared past and maybe something new. Nathan smiled. If your grandma doesn't mind, I'd love to. And so in the small kitchen of a modest apartment, far removed from the world he was accustomed to, Nathan Reed felt perhaps for the first time in many years as though he had come home. The meeting room on the 40th floor of Reed Tower was silent, except for the monotone voice of an executive presenting growth projections for the next quarter. Colorful charts filled the projection screen, bright green arrows indicating success, progress, profit. Nathan watched it all with a vacant stare. His body was present, impeccable in a tailored Italian suit, posture perfect in the leather chair at the head of the table, but his mind was far away, wandering through the corridors of a worn-down building on the other side of the city. 3 days had passed since his encounter with Lily and Eleanor. 3 days of flawless routine, perfectly coordinated appointments, efficient decisions that moved millions. Everything was exactly as before. Except it wasn't. Mr. Reed, any thoughts on the expansion strategy? The CFO's voice brought him back to the room. 12 pairs of eyes stared at him, waiting. Nathan cleared his throat, adjusting his tie, a reflexive gesture whenever he felt pressure. Proceed as planned. I want daily reports on implementation. The meeting continued. Nathan took notes, gave orders, approved budgets. His mind performed its duties perfectly, honed by years of training. while part of him, an ever-growing part, remained in that small kitchen where elephant pancakes had been served on chipped plates. By the time he returned to his office, night had fallen over the city. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see a carpet of lights stretching to the horizon. He unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk, the only one kept locked, and pulled out a manila envelope. Old photographs. There weren't many, and they'd yellowed with age. His father had never been sentimental, and his mother had taken most of the family mementos when she left. What remained were sparse fragments of a lonely childhood in a house far too large. In one of the pictures, a roughly 8-year-old Nathan smiled shyly beside a birthday cake. Behind him, partly cut off by the photo's frame, stood Eleanor younger, more vibrant, wearing the same gentle smile he had rediscovered days before. It was no coincidence that in almost all the few happy photos of his childhood, Eleanor was there, even if only partially, even if only as a peripheral presence that the professional photographers his father hired tried discreetly to exclude from the shot. Nathan leaned back in his chair, a feeling of heaviness settling in his chest. He recalled Eleanor's words about her dismissal, his father's lies. How many other truths had been distorted over the years? How many genuine connections had been severed for the sake of appearances and convenience? On his desk, his phone vibrated with new notifications. More emails, more appointments, more decisions awaiting his verdict. The empire he had built never stopped, never waited, never hesitated. But he hesitated now. He picked up another photo. This one showed only the large house where he grew up, photographed from a distance on a sunny day. It looked like something out of a real estate catalogue, perfect, impersonal, devoid of any real meaning. He wondered what it might have been like to grow up with someone like Lily around. A little sister with curious eyes and impossible questions. A child to teach, to protect, for whom the world was still new and full of marvels. What would it have been like to fill that cold mansion with a child's laughter, with a bit of chaos, with life? Nathan put the photos away and walked to the window. Outside, the city continued its perpetual motion cars, people, lives in constant transit. Somewhere in that sea of lights, a 4-year-old girl was probably being tucked into bed. Maybe Eleanor was reading her a story. Maybe they were sharing the last slice of the cake he had brought. The emptiness he felt wasn't new. It had been there for years, buried under layers of ambition and determination. But now it had a name, a shape, a freckled face with a hesitant smile. His phone rang again. Margaret, his assistant, reminding him of a dinner with investors in 30 minutes. "I'll be there," he replied automatically. But when he hung up, he remained motionless, gazing out over the city. The void inside him seemed to expand with every breath, filling every space once occupied by goals, triumphs, and numbers. No skyscrapers bearing his name, no international bank accounts, no most successful young entrepreneur titles could fill what a simple whisper from a hungry child had exposed. Eleanor had been dismissed, cast aside as something dispensable. And he, on his path to becoming like his father, was following the same pattern of valuing efficiency over humanity. When he finally left his office for the business dinner, Nathan Reed carried not only the weight of a corporate empire, but also the burden of a disturbing realization. All his success, his entire empire, his meticulously planned life, none of it was enough to fill the void that a single child's whisper had laid bare. The late afternoon sun cast elongated shadows as Nathan once again climbed the worn steps of the building where Eleanor and Lily lived. This time, there was no hesitation in his steps. He carried an envelope and a small, brightly colored gift bag. During the week that had passed since their reunion, he had meticulously planned what he would say. Nathan Reed, after all, was a man of solutions. And in his world, the solution to Eleanor and Lily's problems seemed obvious. Money. The resource he never lacked, and that, in his world, resolved almost everything. Upon reaching the 3rd floor, he took a deep breath before knocking on the light blue door. He was greeted almost immediately by Lily's radiant smile. She wore a clean dress, but one clearly worn by time and many washes. "Mr. Nathan," she exclaimed with genuine joy, as if his arrival were the most extraordinary event in the world. "Grandma, Mr. Nathan's back." Eleanor appeared behind her granddaughter, drying her hands on a dishcloth. Her face showed signs of surprise, but she offered a cautious smile. "Nathan, it's good to see you again," she said, opening the door wider. "Come in, please." The apartment was just as he remembered, impeccably clean and organized despite its limitations. A pleasant aroma of something cooking drifted in the air. "I brought a little present for Lily," Nathan said, handing the colorful bag to the girl whose eyes sparkled with anticipation. "Can I open it, Grandma?" she asked, clutching the bag as if it were treasure. Eleanor nodded with a smile. "Of course, my love. And what do we say when we receive a present?" "Thank you, Mr. Nathan," Lily said before even seeing what was inside. Then she tore the wrapping paper with the unrestrained enthusiasm of a 4-year-old. Inside was a box of colored pencils and a good quality sketchbook. Nothing overly expensive or ostentatious. Nathan had thought carefully about that, but nice enough to encourage the little girl's creativity. "Wow, look, Grandma, it has every color in the world," Lily exclaimed, opening the box of pencils reverently. Eleanor smiled at her granddaughter and then at Nathan. "It's a very kind gift. Lily loves to draw." "I'll start drawing right now," declared the girl, running to the small table in the corner of the room, already flipping open her new sketchbook. With Lily occupied, Eleanor invited Nathan to sit down. "Would you like some coffee or maybe tea?" "Coffee would be great, thank you," he replied, following her to the little kitchen. While Eleanor prepared the beverage, Nathan noticed she looked better than on his previous visit. Her cough seemed less frequent, and her cheeks had more color. "Oh, you look healthier," he commented. Eleanor nodded as she poured coffee into a simple but well-kept mug. "I am. That soup you brought worked miracles," she joked, though gratitude resonated in her tone. Nathan accepted the mug and took a sip, surprised by the bold flavor. "You still make excellent coffee." A brief silence settled between them, both comfortable and uncomfortable laden with a shared past and vastly different presents. "Eleanor," he began finally, placing the mug on the table and pulling an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "I'd like to help you and Lily." The smile on Eleanor's face faded slightly. Nathan pressed on, feeling an almost physical need to explain himself. "It's not fair what happened. My father never should have." He paused, reorganizing his thoughts. "What I mean is, I'd like to offer financial assistance. No strings attached, just..." He pushed the envelope toward her. "To help you get back on your feet." Eleanor looked at the envelope but did not pick it up. When she lifted her eyes, her expression was a mixture of gratitude and something more complex. "That's very generous of you, Nathan," she said at last, her voice soft but firm. "But I can't accept it." Nathan blinked, confused. The envelope contained a check for a substantial amount, enough for Eleanor and Lily to move to a better place, for Lily to attend a good school, for Eleanor to receive proper medical treatment. "I don't understand," he said slowly. "This could change everything for you." Eleanor smiled kindly, as if explaining something complicated to a child. "That's exactly why I can't take it. I don't want charity, Nathan." "It's not charity," he protested, frustration creeping into his voice. "It's just help from an old friend." "It's a noble gesture," Eleanor replied. "But what I need isn't pity money. I need dignity, to rebuild my life on my own terms." Nathan felt deeply unsettled. In his world, financial problems had financial solutions. It was simple, direct, efficient. Eleanor's refusal contradicted all his logic. "But Lily," he began, lowering his voice, "she deserves more than this." "Yes," Eleanor agreed without hesitation, "which is why I need to find my own way to show her that dignity can't be bought." A heavy silence fell between them. Nathan felt powerless, a feeling he was unaccustomed to. His entire empire, his wealth, his influence, none of it could solve the situation in the way he wanted. "Mr. Nathan!" Lily's cheerful voice cut through the tension. She came running, holding up a colorful drawing. "I made a picture for you." Nathan took the paper, feeling a lump in his throat as he saw what the child had created. 3 stick figures clearly representing him, Lily, and Eleanor, holding hands in front of what looked like the bakery where they first met. A bright yellow sun shone in the top corner, and red hearts floated around the figures. "That's us," Lily explained needlessly, pointing at each figure. You, me, and Grandma happy. That's lovely, Lily, Nathan said, his voice strangely hoarse. I'll keep it forever. As he carefully folded the drawing and placed it inside his jacket pocket close to his heart, Nathan Reed, the man, who could buy almost anything, realized he was facing something his money could not buy. The opportunity to become part of that family, not through what he could give, but through who he could be to them. The Reed mansion was silent as Nathan parked his car at the circular driveway. The garden, once impeccably maintained by a team of gardeners, showed signs of neglect. Vines crept over the stone walls, and the classical statues his father cherished were partially covered by dried leaves. It had been almost 2 years since he last visited the place. After his father's death, he'd instructed the maintenance staff to preserve the property, but with no particular sentimentality. It was just another asset in his vast portfolio. Or so he had thought until now. The key turned in the lock with a heavy click. Inside, the air had that peculiar smell of places rarely inhabited, a mix of cleaning products and absence. Nathan let the door close behind him and stood motionless in the grand foyer for a few moments, allowing memories to surface. Here, in this grand space with its marble floors and sweeping staircase, he had been a lonely child. His footsteps echoed as he slowly walked down the hallway toward the kitchen, the only place in this mansion that held genuinely warm memories. The kitchen, once Eleanor's domain, seemed oddly small now. Or maybe it was just her absence that made the space feel diminished. Nathan ran his hand over the cold granite countertop, remembering how he used to sit there to do homework while Eleanor prepared dinner. He opened one of the upper cabinets almost instinctively. He was surprised to find some of the utensils Eleanor had used, wooden spoons bearing marks of use, a slightly rusted whisk, old cookie cutters. In the third drawer he found the notebook, a worn-out journal bound in faded red faux leather, stained with flour and grease around the edges. He recognized it immediately. It was where Eleanor had recorded her favorite recipes, the ones not found in cookbooks passed down through generations in her family. Carefully, like handling a relic, Nathan opened the notebook. Eleanor's elegant, slightly slanted handwriting filled the yellowed pages. Hearty beef stew for cold days, orange birthday cake, vegetable soup for a cold. Each recipe included not just instructions, but personal notes. Nathan loves extra cinnamon, perfect with Mrs. Reed's jasmine tea, double chocolate for Mr. Reed's tough days. His life was catalogued there in measurements and ingredients, in little observations showing how Eleanor had noticed every preference, every mood, every unspoken need of the family she served. On the last used page of the notebook, a special recipe caught his eye: Sunday pancakes for little Nathan. The page was more stained than the others, as though frequently consulted. Next to the list of ingredients, a small note read, "Shaping them in fun forms can make any Sunday better, especially when he's sad about his parents' absence." Nathan felt a knot in his throat. Growing up in that enormous house while his parents were busy building fortunes and reputations, Eleanor had noticed his loneliness. In her simple, direct way, she had tried to fill the voids. He sat on the high stool he used to occupy as a child, flipping through the notebook again, this time paying closer attention. It wasn't just a cookbook, it was a record of care, of attention to detail, of work done with genuine love. Then he understood what Eleanor had meant about dignity. She had never just been an employee carrying out tasks. She had put her identity, her value, her heart into everything she did. Accepting money as charity would erase all the meaning she had created for herself through her work. The solution came to him with sudden clarity. He couldn't simply give Eleanor what she needed. He had to find a way for her to earn it herself, to use her talents, to keep her dignity. Closing the notebook carefully, Nathan slipped it into his leather briefcase. There was one specific recipe in there he would need soon. As he left the mansion, the weight in his chest felt a little lighter. He had a plan now, one not guided by the principles of efficiency and profitability that usually drove his business decisions. This would be more personal, more human. He drove to a stationery store near his office. He chose a decent quality writing paper, nothing ostentatious. Sitting in his car, he wrote a brief message. Then he bought a colorful envelope that he imagined would appeal to a 4-year-old. The route to the apartment complex where Eleanor and Lily lived was familiar to him now. The sun was beginning to set when he parked, tinting the sky orange and pink and making the run-down buildings appear a bit less grim. Nathan didn't go upstairs this time. He sent a message to the old phone number Eleanor had reluctantly given him on his last visit. Just for emergencies, she'd said. Minutes later, Lily appeared at the building's entrance, holding her grandma's hand. Upon seeing him, the child broke into a beaming smile and ran toward him. "Mr. Nathan, you came back." He knelt to meet her at eye level, aware of Eleanor's watchful gaze just a few steps behind. "Hi, Lily," he greeted, smiling. "I brought something special for you." He handed her the brightly colored envelope, which she took with curious eyes. "It's a secret between us," he explained in a mock whisper. "I need your help to convince your grandma." Lily nodded solemnly, as if she had just received an important mission. She placed a finger over her lips in a shh gesture, eliciting a quiet chuckle from Nathan. Standing up, he met Eleanor's gaze, a blend of curiosity and caution. He just smiled, gave a small wave, and headed back to his car. As he drove back to the city center, Nathan Reed felt curiously light. The recipe notebook beside him was more than a relic from the past. It was a roadmap to a future that, for the first time in a long while, seemed filled with possibilities that couldn't be measured in numbers and percentages. 3 days after delivering the envelope to Lily, Nathan parked in front of Eleanor's building once more. This time there was something different in his demeanor, a blend of determination and nervousness he rarely showed, even in billion-dollar negotiations. On the passenger seat lay a leather portfolio containing documents, plans, and architectural drawings. His plan had been meticulously refined, every detail considered with the same care he gave his biggest Reed Enterprises ventures. The difference was that, for the first time in years, it wasn't just about financial gain, it was personal. Lily was at the door of the building, practically bouncing with excitement. Nathan noticed she still held the envelope he had given her, now crumpled from being opened and closed repeatedly. "Mr. Nathan, I didn't tell Grandma, it's a surprise," she whispered in a voice loud enough to be heard down the street. "And I made a drawing of the idea." "Excellent work, Agent Lily," he replied, playing along. "Shall we present our plan?" Eleanor awaited them in the apartment, her expression a mix of curiosity and slight concern. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, which Nathan suspected she saved for special occasions. "You've made my granddaughter very mysterious these past few days," she commented after their greetings, pouring some tea she had prepared. "She's been whispering in corners and hiding drawings when I walk into the room." Nathan smiled, accepting the teacup she offered. "I apologize for the secrecy, but I needed her input for something I'd like to propose to you." Lily could hardly contain her excitement, practically vibrating on the edge of her chair, her eyes darting between her grandma and Nathan with barely contained anticipation. "Eleanor," he began, setting his cup aside and opening his portfolio, "I believe I've found a way to help you without compromising what you value most, your dignity and independence." He removed the documents and spread them out on the small table. Architectural layouts, market analyses, financial forecasts, all neatly arranged with the efficiency that marked his business ventures. "There's a property on Castle Street, about 4 blocks from here. It used to be a small cafe that recently went out of business. The space is small but has everything needed for an artisan bakery." Eleanor's eyes widened slightly as she examined the papers. Nathan pressed on, his voice growing more confident with each sentence. "My proposal is to turn that space into a bakery, and I want to invite you to be the head baker and manager." Eleanor lifted her gaze from the documents, her expression unreadable. "Nathan, I appreciate it, but this would still be a partnership," he interrupted gently. "Not charity, Eleanor. I'm offering a business proposition. I'll provide the initial capital, you provide the talent and experience. We split the profits. It's an investment like any other I would make, except this time I know exactly how special it can be." He took out the red recipe notebook he'd retrieved from his parents' house and placed it carefully on the table. "I found this at my father's place. Your recipes, your legacy." Eleanor's fingers touched the faded red cover with reverence, as though she were handling a treasure she thought lost forever. Tears shone in her eyes. "I still have this," she said quietly, flipping through the yellowed pages. "These recipes, they were passed down from my grandmother, my mother." "They can be the heart of the new business," Nathan said. "Traditional recipes made with the same care you've always put into your cooking. Nothing mass-produced or impersonal. A bakery where every product tells a story and carries meaning." Eleanor looked at Lily, who sat wide-eyed, taking in the scene and then back at Nathan. "A business like that would require a lot of work, dedication." "Which is why it wouldn't be charity," he responded. "It would be yours, built with your own hands and talent." "Can I show her now, Grandma, please?" Lily interjected, unable to hold back any longer. Eleanor nodded, still processing Nathan's proposal. The little girl rushed to her room and returned with several colorful drawings, spreading them over Nathan's documents on the table. "Look, Grandma, I drew our bakery. Here you are making bread, here I am helping, and here's Mr. Nathan eating everything." She pointed to the stick figures, each identifiable by the details Lily considered essential. The bun on Eleanor's head, her own flowered dress, and Nathan with what appeared to be an extremely long tie. The child went on to describe her vision, pointing to a vibrant storefront filled with imaginary breads and cakes, a blue door just like ours, and smiling customers. "And here, Grandma, are the special buns you'll make, and I'll help decorate, and everyone will want to buy them." Lily's enthusiasm was contagious. Nathan watched Eleanor's expression soften as she studied her granddaughter's drawings, glimpsing the future through the eyes of a 4-year-old. "A bakery," Eleanor murmured, mostly to herself. There was hesitation in her voice, but also something else, a flicker of hope, a spark of possibility Nathan had never seen before. "Think of it as picking up something that was interrupted," he suggested. "It's not charity if you'll be working, creating, managing your own business." "But why would you do this?" Eleanor asked, looking him straight in the eye. "What's your angle in this partnership?" It was a fair question, and Nathan had prepared for it. What he hadn't anticipated was the raw honesty of his own answer. "Because for the first time in a very long time, I found something that matters to me beyond balance sheets and acquisitions." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Maybe I'm looking for a bit of that dignity you mentioned, the dignity of being part of something meaningful." The silence that followed was filled only by the sound of Lily rearranging her drawings, oblivious to the intensity between the adults. "I'll need to think about it," Eleanor said at last, gently closing her recipe notebook. "It's a big decision." "Please, Grandma," Lily begged, hugging her grandmother's leg. "It'll be so cool. You always say you wish you had your own kitchen again." Eleanor smiled down at her granddaughter, gently stroking her hair. "It's not that simple, my love. There are many things to consider." "Like what?" Nathan asked, ready to address any objection. "My health," Eleanor answered bluntly. "I'm not as energetic as I used to be, and Lily would need someone to look after her while I work." "The proposal includes full health insurance," he replied promptly. "And as for Lily, we can set up a small corner for her in the kitchen. When she starts school, we'll adjust the schedule. It's a family business, Eleanor, designed around your needs." Her expression revealed her inner conflict, her desire to accept struggling against years of hard-earned pride and independence. "I need one night to think it over," she finally said. Nathan nodded, respecting her process. As he said his goodbyes, Lily accompanied him to the door, holding his hand. "She's going to say yes," the child whispered, brimming with unwavering confidence. "I know because she smiled with her eyes when she saw the red book." The call came the next morning, too early for corporate standards and too late for the anxiety that had kept Nathan awake most of the night. "I accept your proposal," Eleanor said without preamble, "on one condition." "Anything," he replied immediately. "I want to do this properly, a formal contract, clear profit sharing and decision-making. I don't want favors. I want a real partnership." Nathan smiled, knowing she couldn't see him. "I wouldn't expect any less from you, Eleanor. I'll have the documents drawn up today." The small building on Castle Street had housed many businesses over the decades, a watch repair shop, a bookstore, and most recently the cafe that had closed. It had charm, with its exposed brick walls and large windows looking out on the quiet street. Renovation began the following week. Nathan hired a small but efficient crew, adhering strictly to Eleanor's precise instructions for the kitchen. Every detail was considered: the placement of ovens, the height of the counters, the natural light that would make the space inviting. Eleanor supervised everything with a watchful eye, growing more confident each day. She brought Lily with her, and the girl quickly became the unofficial mascot of the renovation, charming the workers with her drawings and endless questions. One especially sunny afternoon, when the renovation was nearly complete, Nathan found Eleanor in the almost finished kitchen, running her hands over the new marble countertop with a thoughtful expression. "Any regrets?" he asked, approaching her gently. She smiled, shaking her head. "I feel emotional, scared, grateful, all at the same time." "I know how you feel," he admitted, surprising himself with his own honesty. "I never imagined such a small investment could bring me so much hope." Eleanor laughed softly. "Small for you, Nathan. For me, it's everything." The moment was interrupted by Lily, who bounded into the kitchen, flour already dusting the miniature apron Eleanor had stitched for her. "Grandma, are we making bread today? You promised we'd test the new oven." Eleanor nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, we are. You can help knead the dough." Nathan watched as grandma and granddaughter began their ritual, sifting flour, measuring yeast, adding water at the exact temperature. They danced around each other in a silent choreography of knowledge passed down through generations. "Mr. Nathan, you have to help too," Lily proclaimed, not asking but stating a fact. He glanced at his manicured hands and expensive suit. "I don't know how to make bread, Lily." "I'll teach you," she said with the unshakable confidence of childhood. "It's easy, you just have to do this with your hands." She demonstrated a kneading motion, sending more flour flying onto her apron. Before he could protest, Nathan found himself with his sleeves rolled up, hands covered in flour, attempting to mimic Eleanor's precise movements in kneading the dough. No, not like that, Mr. Nathan," Lily giggled. "You're just petting the bread, you have to be stronger," Eleanor observed with amusement. "She's right. Bread needs a firm hand. It's like shaping the future. You can't be too gentle if you want the dough to rise." In the days that followed, an unlikely routine developed. Nathan, the CEO who rarely left his office before nightfall, now found time to stop by the small storefront almost daily, always with some business-related excuse no one believed. Neighbors began noticing the activity, drawn by curiosity. At first reserved, Eleanor gradually opened up, offering samples of bread and pastries to potential customers, receiving praise that brought color to her cheeks. "Bread boss, look what I made," Lily called one afternoon, proudly presenting a braided loaf that looked more like a complicated knot than any recognizable shape. "Bread boss?" Nathan echoed, raising an eyebrow at Eleanor, who merely shrugged with a smile. "You're the boss, and this is a bakery," Lily explained with perfect childish logic. "Now come, I'll teach you to braid like Grandma taught me." And so Nathan Reed, the billionaire at the helm of one of the country's largest corporations, found himself perched on a low stool in a small bakery kitchen, receiving painstakingly detailed instructions from a 4-year-old on the proper way to braid dough. No, that won't work," Lily sighed dramatically whenever he made a mistake. "Look, first this one, then back again, got it?" "I'm trying," he replied with a patience that surprised even himself. Across the kitchen, Eleanor prepared a batch of sourdough bread, occasionally glancing over with a soft smile. There was a lightness about her now, a renewed spark that illuminated her every move. One afternoon, when Lily finally approved one of Nathan's braids, "This one's almost good, Mr. Nathan. It's just a little crooked." Eleanor walked over to him with a cup of tea. "You know," she said, watching the girl now decorating the loaf with seeds, fully absorbed in her task, "when you showed up at my door with Lily, I thought I was seeing a ghost. Part of a past I tried very hard to leave behind." Nathan took the cup, waiting for her to continue. "But now I realize maybe it wasn't just the past coming back," she went on, gazing at Lily with loving eyes. "Maybe it was the future arriving in a way I never could have imagined." Nathan looked at his hands, still dusted with flour, and then at the modest bakery taking shape around them, a venture minuscule compared to the billion-dollar projects he oversaw, yet somehow far more meaningful. "Bread boss," Lily called again, laughing. "Come see, I made a bread with a face on it." And Nathan went to her, leaving behind temporarily the weight of corporate empires to immerse himself in the much more immediate and real world of braided loaves and children's laughter. The day before the grand opening arrived under a sky streaked with orange and purple. The small bakery on Castle Street was ready. The ovens had been tested, recipes perfected, schedules set. Everything was meticulously planned, each detail considered with the same care Eleanor gave her finest baked goods. The sign, still covered by a cloth, waited for its unveiling. Eleanor's Breads. After lengthy discussions, that name had won out. Nathan had suggested something more sophisticated. Eleanor preferred something simple, and honesty had finally prevailed. After all, the place was an extension of herself, her art, her story. Lily had spent the entire day sticking colorful stars on the paper bags to be used for packaging bread, supervised by Nathan, who'd discovered a patience he never knew he had. The girl hummed as she worked, inventing songs about magic bread and grandmas with super baking powers. That was when Nathan noticed something. Eleanor, usually practical and decisive, seemed distant, her movements less precise, and her gaze fixed on some point beyond the freshly painted walls of the bakery. "Is everything all right?" he asked gently after Lily left to show off the decorated bags to a curious neighbor. Eleanor jumped slightly, as if startled out of deep thoughts. "Yes, of course," she replied automatically, adjusting a stack of napkins that was already perfectly aligned. "Just making sure everything's set for tomorrow." Nathan watched her for a moment. Over the months they had worked together on the bakery, he had learned to read Eleanor's subtle signs, the way her lips tightened when she was worried, how her fingers drummed softly when something bothered her. "Eleanor," he said softly, "I think we've known each other long enough to be honest with each other." She stopped what she was doing, her hands still on the polished counter. For a long moment, only the ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. "What if no one comes?" she finally whispered. "What if I've forgotten how to do this? What if people don't like it? What if—" Doubts poured out now, like a dam finally giving way under the pressure. Eleanor, who had seemed so strong and resilient in the face of life's hardships, was revealing her deepest vulnerability: fear of failure. "It's been so long since I've worked professionally," she continued, her voice trembling. "I've spent years cooking just for Lily and me. What if I'm not good enough anymore? What if this investment, all this work, all the faith you've placed in me ends up being a huge mistake?" Nathan listened in silence, letting her release the anxieties she had likely harbored for weeks or months. "Do you know what I've learned about business over the years?" he asked, leaning against the counter beside her. "That the most successful ventures are rarely the ones with the perfect plans or biggest resources. They're the ones built on genuine passion and purpose." Eleanor looked at him, tears shining in her eyes. "I know what fear is, Eleanor," he went on. "I built an empire trying to prove my worth to a father who was never really paying attention. Every acquisition, every merger, every new venture carried that same terror. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" He paused, organizing thoughts he rarely shared with anyone. "But do you know the difference between all those ventures and this bakery? Those were about numbers, about proving something. This is about life, about real things. It's about the genuine talent you have." Eleanor shook her head. "I'm not sure I have that talent anymore, Nathan. It's been so long." "I have something to show you," he said, pulling a small, slightly crumpled envelope from the inside of his jacket. Eleanor watched curiously as he removed a faded, folded piece of paper from the envelope. When he opened it, she let out a soft gasp. It was a child's drawing, clearly a young boy's effort with crayons. It depicted a figure she recognized as her younger self beside a boy, both surrounded by round shapes that must have been bread or cakes. "I found this among my old things," Nathan explained. "I must have been about 7 when I drew it. I made it after a Sunday when you let me help bake cookies, remember?" Eleanor touched the yellowed paper gently. "You kept it all this time?" "Not exactly. I found it stuffed in a box in the mansion's attic. And you know what I realized? My father didn't keep it, neither did my mother. It was you, wasn't it? You who valued this scribble that would mean nothing to anyone else. She nodded slowly, memories flooding back. You were so proud of that drawing, I couldn't throw it away. You taught me how to feed myself, Nathan said, his voice softer than Eleanor had ever heard it. Not just with food, but with attention, with care, with little gestures that meant everything to a boy who felt invisible in his own home. Now let me help you believe again. Eleanor opened her mouth to reply, but was interrupted by Lily's noisy return, her small footsteps echoing across the newly installed floor. "Grandma, Grandma," she cried, clutching a handful of wildflowers she had clearly picked from a nearby garden. "Look what I got to decorate the bread tomorrow." She halted abruptly at the sight of her grandmother's emotional face. With that extraordinary intuition some children possess, she dropped the flowers on the counter and lifted her arms, asking to be picked up. Eleanor scooped her up, holding her tightly against her chest as if Lily were an anchor in stormy waters. "Are you sad, Grandma?" the child asked, cupping her grandma's face in her small hands. "Just a little nervous about the bakery, my love," Eleanor admitted honestly. Lily thought for a moment, her face solemn with concentration. Then, with the unshakable conviction of childhood, she declared, "You don't need to be scared, Grandma. We're a team. Me, you, and Mr. Nathan. Mr. Nathan has money. You make the best bread in the world and I can make pretty drawings. Everyone will want to buy from us." The simplicity of her logic drew a soft laugh from Eleanor, who hugged her granddaughter again. "You're absolutely right, my love," she agreed, exchanging a look of mutual understanding with Nathan over Lily's head. "We're a team." The rest of the afternoon was spent with final preparations. Eleanor still showed hints of insecurity, but bolstered by Nathan's support and Lily's unstoppable enthusiasm, she checked the stock of ingredients one last time, confirmed the schedule for the next morning, and finally declared all was ready. "Time to go home," she announced as dusk fell outside. "We need to be back early tomorrow." Nathan offered them a ride, and the three traveled together through the by-now familiar streets, connecting the bakery to the small apartment Eleanor and Lily called home. "Mr. Nathan, are you going to sleep on our couch tonight?" Lily asked from the back seat, her voice sleepy from the day's excitement. Nathan glanced at Eleanor, who returned a slight shrug and a gentle smile. "If you'd like to stay," she said. "It might be nice not to be alone on the eve of our opening. We could head to the bakery together in the morning." "I'd be happy to," he replied, surprised at how naturally the idea pleased him. By the time they arrived at the building, Lily was fast asleep, exhausted by the day's events. Nathan carried her carefully to the third floor, astonished by how light she felt in his arms, how completely she trusted him as she snuggled against his shoulder. While Eleanor searched for her keys in her purse, Nathan noticed something on the floor near the door. A white envelope, no postage or address, just Eleanor handwritten on the front. "There's something here for you," he said, nodding so as not to wake Lily. Eleanor picked up the envelope with a curious expression. When she turned it over in her hands, Nathan saw her freeze, her eyes going wide with shock. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" She didn't answer immediately, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened the door and stepped into the apartment. Nathan followed her, carrying Lily into her small bedroom. He gently removed the child's shoes and tucked her in. When he returned to the living room, Eleanor was still standing where he'd left her, staring at the open envelope in her hands. "I recognize this handwriting," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's Carmen's, my daughter." "Would you like some privacy to read it?" Nathan asked quietly. Eleanor shook her head. "No," she replied more firmly. "I've been alone long enough." With still trembling fingers, she opened the letter and began reading. Nathan watched in silence as a series of emotions, shock, pain, relief, hope, flitted across her face. When she finished, Eleanor brought a hand to her mouth as if to stifle a sob. Without speaking, she extended the letter toward Nathan. The handwriting was hurried but legible. "Mom, I know I have no right to show up like this after so long without contact. Every day away from you and Lily was torture, but I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. When I left Lily with you, I didn't tell you the whole truth. Roberto wasn't just violent with me, he started making threats against Lily too. After I left him, he stalked me, promising that if he couldn't have me back, He'd make me lose everything I loved. I was afraid he'd follow through, that he'd try to take Lily away from me or worse. I decided to disappear completely, believing that if I vanished from your lives, you would be safe. He never knew where you lived, Mom. I thought that if I vanished, he would follow me and leave you alone. In recent months, I learned that Roberta was arrested for other crimes. I finally feel it's safe to try returning. I've been watching from a distance. I saw the bakery being renovated. I saw you smile again, Mom. I know Lily probably barely remembers me. I know you might hate me for abandoning you both. I don't expect forgiveness, but for the first time in years, I feel brave enough to try. I want so badly to see you again, to rebuild what was lost. With love and regret, Carmen. She's alive, Eleanor whispered. All this time. She was trying to protect you, Nathan said gently. A slight noise at the bedroom door made both of them turn. Lily stood there sleepy-eyed, dragging a small teddy bear on the floor. Grandma, she asked, confused. Why are you crying? Eleanor opened her arms, and Lily ran into them, snuggling against her. These are happy tears, my love, Eleanor replied, her voice choked with emotion. Sometimes people cry when they're happy too. Is it because of the bakery? Lily asked, her eyes already drifting closed from tiredness. It's because of many good things happening, Eleanor answered, looking at Nathan over Lily's head. That night, none of them moved to their beds. Eleanor leaned back on the sofa, Lily sleeping in her arms, the letter folded carefully in her hand. Nathan sat beside them, resting an arm along the back of the couch, offering presence, steadiness, silent support. Do you think I should see her? Eleanor asked softly. What does your heart say? Nathan replied. That everyone deserves a second chance, she finally said. That life is too short to live without forgiveness. Nathan nodded, understanding that she wasn't talking only about her absent daughter, but also about herself, her own fears and doubts. Tomorrow will be a new beginning, he said, for all of us. Eleanor smiled through the last of her tears and rested her head gently on his shoulder. Soon she too fell asleep, exhausted by the emotional whirlwind of the day. Nathan Reed stayed awake a bit longer, an unlikely guardian for this small family. When sleep finally claimed him, his arm was still around Eleanor's shoulders, his head inclined to rest against hers. The three of them joined in an embrace that felt more like home than any grand mansion ever had. Eleanor's Breads had now been open for 3 months. What started as a small neighborhood establishment soon earned a reputation in the area. By Saturday mornings, people often lined up to buy the special sourdough loaves or the seasonal pies Eleanor created, inspired by her grandmother's recipes. Though the space was small, it had become a gathering spot. A few outdoor tables were added for customers who wanted coffee and a chance to enjoy the baked goods right there. A special display case was installed to showcase favorite items, always decorated with Lily's colorful drawings. But it wasn't just the product quality that drew people in. There was something in the atmosphere, a combination of the smell of fresh bread, Eleanor's tired yet genuine smile, and Lily's contagious cheer that made customers return, bringing friends, relatives, and sharing their find like a precious secret. And quietly observing it all with a discreet sense of satisfaction was Nathan Reed. That autumn morning, he entered the bakery carrying an elegant paper bag. It was nearly closing time for the morning shift. Eleanor was at the register, completing a transaction with an elderly customer. Lily, clad in her personalized apron bearing the bakery's name, was arranging napkins on the tables with the utmost seriousness. Nathan waited for the customer to leave, giving Eleanor a small wave, which she returned with a fond, if weary, smile. He then approached Lily, who abandoned the napkins to run excitedly toward him. "Mr. Nathan!" she cried, hugging his legs with surprising strength for such a little girl. "Did you bring a surprise?" Nathan chuckled. Lily's intuition for presents was almost uncanny. "How do you know I brought something for you?" "Because you always bring something on Wednesdays," she said with unassailable logic. "And today's Wednesday." He pretended to think seriously about this. Maybe I brought something for your grandma this time." "No. You bring Grandma's surprises on Fridays because that's the day she makes the harder breads," Lily countered, extending her hand expectantly. Nathan couldn't suppress a laugh. The child had mapped his habits with impressive accuracy. Indeed, he'd established an unspoken pattern. On Wednesdays, he brought something for Lily. On Fridays, a special ingredient or spice for Eleanor. "You're absolutely right, Miss Lily," he conceded, handing her the bag. "This is for you." With the typical enthusiasm of a 4-year-old, Lily opened the bag, her eyes widening at its contents. It was a notebook bound in blue leather, her name embossed on the cover in gold letters. The pages were thick and creamy, perfect for the stories she'd begun to write, a mix of drawings and letters only she could fully decipher. "It's my very own notebook," she squealed, hugging it to her chest, "with my name on it." "It's for you to write your stories," Nathan explained, crouching to meet her gaze. "I've seen how you love telling stories to customers while they wait. I thought you'd like a special place to keep them." Lily nodded solemnly, as if she'd just received a significant mission. "I'll write all of them. Will you read them with me?" "Of course," he promised. "How about we read one story a week? You pick the day." "Sunday," she decided instantly. "Sunday is story day because Grandma makes elephant pancakes and we have more time." Eleanor, who had approached quietly, placed a hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. "That's a wonderful present, Nathan. She's been talking about her stories non-stop since starting kindergarten." Lily's recent enrollment in school was a milestone. With the bakery thriving, Eleanor finally managed to organize her schedule so she could work while Lily was at school. "Grandma, can I start writing now?" Lily asked, already flipping through the blank pages with reverence. "As soon as we finish clearing the tables, sweetheart," Eleanor replied. Then to Nathan, "Stay for coffee? I've just taken a batch of croissants out of the oven." Nathan checked his watch. He had a video conference in 40 minutes, but he would be conducting it from his home office, not the company building. In recent months, he had restructured his schedule to work remotely a few days a week, coincidentally on the days he visited the bakery. "I'd love to," he said, taking his usual seat in the corner from where he could watch the bakery's operations without getting in the way. Eleanor brought him a coffee and a still warm croissant. The simple meal contrasted sharply with the lavish executive brunches he used to attend, but Nathan found a unique pleasure in these quiet moments of coffee in the small bakery. "How goes the search for a bigger apartment?" he asked as Eleanor sat down for a moment to rest her legs. She sighed, running a hand over her hair, where a few grey strands were now joined by light brown ones dyed at Lily's insistence, who declared, "Grandma has to look good because she's an important boss now. Still looking. Prices are absurd even with the bakery doing well, and I don't want to go too far from here." Lily approached, interrupting the conversation, her new notebook open and a colored pencil in hand. "Mr. Nathan, which story do you want me to write first?" He pretended to consider the question deeply. "How about the story of how we met?" The girl nodded eagerly, dashing off to her little table in the corner, an area Eleanor had designated for Lily to do homework, draw, or simply play while Grandma worked. "She remembers that day vividly," Eleanor said quietly, watching Lily with pride. "She asked me the other day if we could go back to that bakery where you met, to thank the lady with the bread for helping you two find each other." A flood of emotion washed over Nathan, gratitude, wonder, and a deep sense of joy. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd arrived 5 minutes later or taken a different route that morning," he admitted. Eleanor studied him for a moment, her gaze now less tired, more alive seeming to see beyond the surface. "I believe some people are meant to find each other," she said at last. "Maybe not that day in that way, but eventually." She paused, a small smile curving her lips. "Thank you for coming back to us, Nathan." The simplicity of the statement caught him off guard. It wasn't just thanks for the bakery, the investment, the practical help. It ran deeper gratitude for returning to her life, for his steady presence, for patiently building a new kind of bond. "I should be the one thanking you," he replied, meaning every word. "For the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm part of something real." Their moment was interrupted by Nathan's phone. With a resigned sigh, he checked the screen, his assistant reminding him of the upcoming meeting. "I have to go," he said, standing up. "Tell Lily I'll be here Sunday for our first reading session." "She'll be counting the minutes," Eleanor assured him. Before leaving, Nathan stopped by Lily's little table where she worked diligently. tongue sticking out in concentration as she drew what looked like a tall man in a suit next to a small girl. "See you Sunday, writer," he said softly, touching her hair. Lily looked up, her face breaking into a bright smile. "Bye, Mr. Nathan, you're my favorite friend." On Sunday, as promised, Nathan arrived at Eleanor and Lily's apartment carrying a small basket of fresh fruit, the perfect complement to the famous elephant pancakes. Over the past few months, an informal routine had formed. Sunday mornings were for pancakes and now for stories. Lily was waiting excitedly, her new blue notebook on the living room table open to the first page, which she had filled with a combination of colorful drawings and clumsy letters, some real, some invented, but all meaningful to her. "It's ready," she announced proudly as soon as Nathan walked in. "I wrote our story." In the kitchen, Eleanor smiled as she heard her granddaughter's enthusiasm. For days, Lily had talked non-stop about the very important story she would write for Mr. Nathan to read. "I can't wait to see it," Nathan said, sitting on the couch next to Lily, who immediately adopted a formal stance like a little teacher about to give a lesson. "I'll read it to you," she declared, though what followed was more a narration based on pictures than a traditional reading. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Lily who was really hungry. She looked at the bread in the window and thought about her grandma, who was also hungry. She turned the page, showing her classmate's version of a man in a suit, towering over a little figure by his side. Then Mr. Nathan, who was very rich but very sad, heard Lily talking to herself. He didn't know how to really look at people because he was always busy looking at his watch and his phone. Nathan couldn't help but smile at the child's startlingly accurate psychological insight. Lily continued, her voice taking on different tones. "But Lily had a piece of bread, not a real piece, just in her heart, and a heart so big, so big." She stretched her arms wide, "that she taught Mr. Nathan how to see." She flipped another page, revealing 3 stick figures holding hands, herself, Nathan, and Eleanor. Then they found Grandma, and Mr. Nathan remembered how she used to make yummy pancakes, and everyone was happy, and Lily got a bakery, and Mr. Nathan got a family, and now they all eat bread and never go hungry again. The end. She closed the notebook with a theatrical flourish, clearly satisfied with her performance. "Did you like it, Mr. Nathan?" He needed a moment to respond, surprised by the emotion welling up. The simplicity of that childish narrative captured his transformation in a way sophisticated analyses never could. "It's the best story I've ever heard," he answered sincerely. Eleanor joined them, discreetly wiping away a tear with the corner of her apron. "I think we have a writer in the family," she remarked, her voice slightly choked. "Grandma, are you crying?" Lily asked, concerned. "Happy tears, sweetie," Eleanor assured her, sitting down next to her granddaughter. "Your story is wonderful. May I read it too?" As Lily proudly recounted the tale word for word, Nathan watched the scene with a growing sense of belonging. In just a few months, his life had changed completely. The man once obsessed with acquisitions and profit projections now treasured Sunday mornings of pancakes and reading sessions with a 4-year-old. The following week settled into a comforting pattern. The bakery prospered, Lily loved school, and Nathan reorganized his professional life to include what he silently called his chosen family. On one particularly cold October afternoon, Nathan received an unexpected call. It was Lily's teacher. He had been added as an emergency contact, along with Eleanor Practical, given the bakery's schedule. The teacher explained there would be a special presentation that afternoon, where each child would share a short story with the class, and Lily was very anxious for both her grandma and Mr. Nathan to attend. "She insisted," said the teacher, her smile almost audible over the phone. "She said you two are her special team." Nathan immediately rearranged his agenda, canceling a meeting with potential investors without the slightest remorse, unthinkable behavior from him just months ago. He texted Eleanor, who replied she was already heading to the school, having left the bakery in the capable hands of Marta, the new assistant she'd recently hired. When he arrived at the small preschool, Nathan was directed to Lily's classroom. Tiny chairs had been arranged in a semicircle, and about 15 children, ages 4 and 5, were waiting eagerly for their turn. Eleanor was already seated near the back. She waved discreetly, and he joined her. Lily walked timidly to the front of the room, clutching her blue notebook as if it were a shield. When the teacher announced her name, Lily cast a nervous glance at her classmates. Then she spotted Nathan and Eleanor in the back, and her face lit up, as though someone had switched on a light inside her. Buoyed by renewed confidence, she opened her notebook and began, her small voice firm despite its softness. Once upon a time there was a hungry little girl and a man who didn't know how to see. She turned the page, showing her classmates one of her drawings. But she had a piece of bread in her heart, and a heart so big. Again she stretched out her arms, that she taught him how to see. The earnestness and genuine emotion in her simple tale captured the children's attention. They listened with the serious focus that only children can give to a peer's story. Lily went on to describe how the girl and the man found her grandma, opened a bakery together, and formed a special team. With each word, Nathan's emotions swelled. Seeing his journey, their journey through the eyes of a 4-year-old, was like rediscovering it, living it afresh with a purity only childhood allows. When Lily finished with "and they lived happily ever after, always eating warm bread," the class burst into enthusiastic applause. After the presentations, Lily dashed over, her eyes sparkling with pride. "You came, did you hear my story?" "We heard it, darling," Eleanor said, hugging her granddaughter. "It was marvelous. You told it just like it happened, just like we practiced on Sunday." Lily beamed, turning to Nathan. "Did you like it, Mr. Nathan? I didn't forget any important parts, did I?" "It was perfect," he assured her, kneeling to her level. "You're a wonderful storyteller, Lily." While the children gathered their belongings to head home, the teacher mentioned a small gathering in the courtyard before dismissal. Lily volunteered to help set up cups and napkins, leaving Eleanor and Nathan alone for a moment. "She turned everything into a fairy tale," Eleanor remarked, watching her granddaughter with pride. "She makes the most ordinary moments feel magical." "Maybe because they are," Nathan replied simply. The ease with which the words came surprised them both. Once the small party ended, they made their way to the exit. Lily excused herself to use the restroom, so Nathan and Eleanor waited by the school gate. That was when Nathan noticed the woman. She was standing on the opposite sidewalk, partially hidden under a tree's shadow. She looked to be around 30, her dark hair tied in a simple ponytail. There was something familiar in her face, a younger version of Eleanor's features, with the same large, expressive eyes Lily had. Her body was tense like a nervous animal ready to bolt, but her gaze was fixed on the school exit. When Lily came running out and joined them, the woman took a hesitant step forward, fully revealing herself. Tears shone in her eyes, visible even from a distance in the late afternoon sunlight. Nathan gently touched Eleanor's arm, tilting his head to signal toward the woman. Eleanor followed his gaze and froze, her hand reflexively tightening around Lily's. "Mom?" Eleanor whispered. So quietly, Nathan was the only one who heard. Lily, sensing the sudden tension, followed their line of sight. "Who's that lady, Grandma? Why is she crying?" Eleanor didn't answer right away. Her body seemed torn between running to her daughter or shielding Lily. "Carmen," she finally managed, voice trembling. The woman, Carmen, walked slowly toward them, each step appearing to take enormous effort. At a few paces away, she halted, uncertain. She began, voice quavering. "I got your message. I'm ready to come back if you'll have me." Eleanor nodded, tears now streaming down her face. She opened her arms in a silent invitation. Carmen rushed forward, almost tripping in her haste, and collapsed into her mother's embrace. "Forgive me," she sobbed into Eleanor's shoulder. "Please forgive me for leaving like that." "My daughter," Eleanor murmured, holding her tightly. "My girl." Lily watched the scene in amazement, her gaze shifting from her grandma to the stranger she clung to so fiercely. Confusion showed in her eyes, but also an instinctive kind of recognition. Slowly, Eleanor released her grip on Carmen, keeping one arm around her shoulders as she turned to Lily. "Lily, my love," she said gently. "This is Carmen. She's your mom." The girl's eyes were huge as she stared at the woman. Carmen knelt so she was at Lily's eye level, tears still tracking down her cheeks, a shaky smile on her lips. "Hi, Lily," she said, voice barely steady. "You've grown so much." For a long moment, no one moved. The world seemed suspended, awaiting the child's reaction, Nathan started to step back, sensing this was a deeply personal moment, but a small hand gripped his fingers firmly, keeping him there. Lily, holding Nathan's hand with one of hers and Eleanor's with the other, studied Carmen for a few more seconds. Then, with the naturalness only children manage in extraordinary moments, she asked, "Do you like elephant pancakes? Grandma makes the best." A smile lit Carmen's face through her tears. "I used to love Grandma's elephant pancakes when I was little. Just like you. Can we make them today?" Lily asked, looking up at Eleanor. "To celebrate?" Eleanor nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Lily hesitated a moment, then released Nathan's hand and stretched it out toward Carmen. "You can come with us. We're a team now." Carmen took the offered hand, her entire body shaking from the effort of containing her emotions. Eleanor, still holding her daughter with one arm, reached her free hand out to Nathan. "All of us," she said, her voice calm and certain, "a team. And so forming an unlikely chain, a billionaire, a baker, a returning mother, and a little girl who had inadvertently brought them all together. They walked together along the sunlit sidewalk toward a future none of them could have imagined just months before. Life, Nathan reflected as they walked, really did have surprising ways of intertwining seemingly disconnected destinies. Like a good loaf of bread, it needed time to rise, to take its final form. And just as Lily had said in her simple yet profound story, sometimes all it takes to transform an entire life is learning how to truly see. And that made all the difference.